Incorporating functional communication training in programming is so important for all of our learners. Not being able to communicate their basic wants and needs is something that many of our learners struggle with and can sometimes cause challenging behavior. So, how is functional communication training incorporated within skills-based treatment? Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna. We're behavior analysts who create weekly content about how to teach children with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about functional communication training with skill-based treatment. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
So I think a lot about how babies develop communication. And when our babies are, under one, they do a lot of crying. And none of us are, upset that they're crying. That's how they get their needs met. They'll cry when they're hungry, they'll cry when they need something, when they're uncomfortable. And what do we do as adults in their life? Like we attend to that. We feed them, we change them, we hold them. Sometimes, as a mother, you might become so familiar that you even know the difference between their whines. They don't even have to get to full out crying. A certain whine means they're wet, a certain whine means they're hungry. And we'll attend to that whine. We won't let it go to the full out meltdown and then finally be like, okay, I'll feed you. And then what happens as they get a little bit older, they start to get they start to babble, they get one word, they get two words, they start to develop language. And around the age of 2 years old, that's when the terrible twos come out because like they have so many things that they want to say, but they don't yet have the full language to be able to say it. They get a lot of meltdowns, and we encourage them to use their words. But at the same time, we understand that language is new and they're starting to learn that language will get their needs met. But that's still a process. And it takes them about, 2.5 years to fully be able to replace a lot of that crying with language. And that's really kind of how we approach challenging behavior. It is um, sometimes it's a lack of being able to communicate. And when we focus more on the communication skills, we're better able to reframe that challenging behavior.
I think that's really important to remember that behavior is communication. And, if you've got a learner who is, tantruming, hitting, self-injurious behavior, what have you, sometimes it's really easy to think, oh goodness, like they're giving me a hard time. And we always say, no, they're having a hard time. But we really need to reframe our thoughts and think, okay, what are they trying to communicate? And that is really, really important because behavior is about them getting what they want, right? It's about getting their needs met when the words may not come as easily. And everybody thinks, oh, well, there's lots of people there who are verbal and they still have negative behavior. How come? And it's lots of people can talk, but they might not be able to request or say specific things. I work with a client who is fully verbal and can express so many things, but he doesn't feel comfortable telling people to get off their cell phones when they're working with him. And he doesn't feel comfortable saying, certain things. So, it's not just for, those kiddos who are non-vocal, it's for everybody. Behavior is communication. It's about getting needs met.
And we also talk a lot about not really only focusing on behavior reduction without giving a child, a student, a learner some sort of replacement. Communication is usually the first thing that we look at when we talk about replacement behaviors, because then you can focus on building a skill instead of just focusing on decreasing a skill. Because again, it's getting a need met, and that need is still going to exist. So also when we introduce communication, we want to make sure that it's serving the same need. So if their behavior is telling somebody to go away, or if their behavior is getting them access to something, we want to make sure that we're giving them a communication skill that's going to serve the same function and better, because we have to still motivate them to use the communication. And if it's harder, then they're not going to use it.
We think about can't do versus won't do. And, sometimes when, people are engaging in, a meltdown, for lack of a better word, do you really think that they want to be engaging in that challenging behavior for 45 minutes, for 3 hours? No, of course they don't. They would way rather get their needs met by saying a word, but it just doesn't come to them. So we really need to think about what can't they do. So to Shira's point, what can't they do, and then teach them those replacement skills is huge.
We talk a lot about communication as a replacement skill for challenging behavior in one of our other episodes, episode 91, called Functional Communication Training. So go check that out. And today we're going to talk about it a little bit in the context of skills-based treatment. So this is the kind of the technology that has been researched and created by Dr. Gregory Hanley and his team, and it's really gaining a lot of traction. And so we thought we'd use this in the context of teaching functional communication training. The premise of SBT, I mean, there's a couple. The first important part is that behaviors don't serve single functions. There are what we call synthesized contingencies that we all want access to some sort of synthesized reinforcement. So it's not that I just want attention. It's not that I just want access, but I might want a certain kind of attention in a certain way that also ends a certain activity. So when we talk about HRE, happy, relax, and engage, that's really taking into consideration what are this learner's synthesized contingencies. So let's think of everything that they could ever want instead of looking at it as single functions. So that's the first thing, that behavior doesn't serve a single function. And we have to take that into consideration when we're treating challenging behavior. So instead of even pulling apart what the single function is, let's just figure out how to take a learner from a place of their own utopia, where they have everything that they ever want, to a place of high expectations. And how do we shape their behavior along the way? And the way that we shape that behavior with kind of the novelty of SBT is that we're teaching the skills of communication, toleration, relinquishing, and transitioning as replacement skills. So we're focusing really a lot on the replacement skills without ever even needing to elicit that strong behavior. So we would start by doing a practical functional assessment. We would create those worlds, the world of utopia and the world of high expectation. And the first thing that we start with is communication. Now, SBT process introduces, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a communication that they're going to eventually use, but we talk about what is this omnibus mand, or the thing that's going to get them access to the thing that they want as quickly as possible. We could always shape that later on. That's not going to be ultimately their form of communication, but we want to introduce a communication that would be quick and easy and that would turn off behavior.
The biggest thing that I see when I'm teaching is, I go into a program and they're trying to teach this learner this massive phrase. And it's something like, can I please have that now? Thank you so much. Or, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but, they may be teaching a longer phrase and the student may only be capable of a couple words, or the longer phrase is just too much effort. And it's a lot easier just to hit somebody to get their way. Another thing I see is that, individuals are teaching different phrases for different situations. So in this situation, I'm going to teach this phrase, but in this situation, I'm going to teach this phrase. And what Hanley's saying is, just at the beginning, especially just, as you're just starting functional communication training, do something called an omnibus mand. I joke around, or he jokes around about being on the bus mand, but it's an omnibus. Omnibus mand. And it's really about like one phrase gets your needs met across a variety of different situations. And that's the very first step.
And we also talk about different, like Shana was saying, different levels of that phrase. So we start with a simple, what he calls FCR. You gotta love acronyms. We're going to talk about SBT, functional communication response. So you choose a simple functional communication response. Sometimes we even break that down further. So if we've introduced like a button, for example, as the mand, if it's too hard for them to independently push that button, we may present the button. We may push the button on them. This is all still part of a simple, FCR. And then we'll move into something that's more complex. So if we've been helping them with the simple FCR, maybe it's more independent, or maybe it's going to be a longer phrase if they're vocal. Maybe it starts with my way, and then the complex FCR might be, can I have my way? And so you're shaping really very small approximations to a communication response. And the important thing is that at the beginning phase, while you're still building communication, is to reinforce every time. But what do you reinforce with? It's that synthesized reinforcement. You're not reinforcing with something outside of, like a separate toy or a separate treat, or you're reinforcing with them being able to very quickly go back to their world, their HRE, where they get everything that they want. It doesn't matter whether it's access or attention or control or whatever you want to pull apart. They're going from an expectation to a place that they are happy, relaxed, and engaged. And we have to be able to really turn on and off behavior with those two worlds, using the communication and slowly building in more expectations as they're successful. So once they can fully communicate and we can decide how complex we want that FCR to be, we'll start slowly introducing toleration. So when they use their FCR, so if they say, "Can I have my way?" Once they're successful with that, we might say something like, "Not right now." But guess what? We're then going to right away reinforce them being okay with that. So if we say "not right now" and they say okay, we reinforce again with HRE.
Sure, absolutely. You can definitely have it. I changed my mind. You're right.
Yeah, because it's really important to be, like we talked about earlier, that the function of the communication serves the same function as the behavior. If the behavior is telling us, "I don't want to do this right now," then their communication is going to not make them do this right now. So that's really important.
Let's give a practical example. I was working with an individual a while ago, and he didn't like to come back from break. When he was on break, he had his iPad and he had everything he wanted. Now, I'm sure there's probably lots wrong with that too, because you don't always have to give someone an iPad on break. But let's just go with this example. He did have his iPad on break. He was in the chair, in a beanbag chair, and we said, "Hey, come on back to the table." And yes, we could have said, "Let's play on the floor and whatever instead." But anytime we presented work, it was a massive meltdown, crawling under the table, hating it. He wasn't giving us his assent to participate in therapy. And he was frustrated and it was hard and everything else. And he couldn't communicate, "I really don't want to do that." Or, "Can I just have one more minute?" Or, "Please let me just finish the game that I'm on." Or, "Let me finish the YouTube video." He couldn't say any of that. So what we taught him was he was happy, relaxed, and engaged in his beanbag chair, watching his video or playing his video game on the iPad. And what we taught him was for him to say, "Not right now." I think we said 1 more minute is what we taught him to say. And we said, "Okay, let's go. Come on back." And he said, "1 more minute." And we said, "Yep, absolutely." And he'd go back to playing that. And you know what? That happened for like all session long, right? It happened for probably about 30 minutes because then we shaped this pretty quickly. But it was 1 more minute. Yep, no problem. You can have 1 more minute. 1 more minute. Yep, you can have that. And then we changed the contingency on him. So it was, 1 more minute. And we said, we didn't do an advanced. He was just capable of 1 more minute. We didn't say, "Excuse me, Shayna, can I have 1 more minute, please?" Or anything like that. We just went to no. And I said, "Say okay. Just say okay." And he looked at me and he went, "Okay." And I said, "Yeah, you know what? Go back to, being on your beanbag chair and everything else." And then the next time he said, "Can I have 1 more minute?" I said, "No." And he went, "Oh, okay." I said, "Yeah, go ahead, be on your beanbag chair." Anyways, over time, we shaped that so that sometimes when he asked for 1 more minute, he got 1 more minute, but other times he had to come to the table. The problem with that is he didn't just get up and come to the table. He'd say, "Okay." And we'd say, "Come on." And like literally as soon as he went to stand up, we're like, "That's one response.
Yeah,
You know what?
never
No
mind.
problem. Never mind. Go play with your game." And we shaped that too. Okay, so he started to stand up. He did stand up. He put his iPad down, and we kept shaping that. And the reinforcer was him sitting back down in his beanbag, getting that iPad. It wasn't a separate anything else. It wasn't, "Oh, okay, well, I've got a different treat for you, or I've got a different activity for you." It was what he was doing and what he wanted to be doing in the first place.
And I think that shaping is such a good point. It is so underestimated how valuable this tool of shaping is, and it's something we've always known that we had. We have the science on it, and it is so valuable because we can take large skills and break them down into the smallest steps so that our students can be successful. But also, it means that they can be successful without provoking challenging behavior. If we can get that skill small enough, then we're not eliciting that behavior. And I think it's also important to know what the precursors to that learner's behavior are so that you know where to shape, where to push, where to reinforce, because it's a difference whether you're getting a strong behavioral reaction and an emotional reaction versus getting a precursor or a whine, or just something that might tell you that they're starting to get upset. because at some point you can still empathize and push them through those kind of behaviors. So it's important to know the difference.
And that's really important where that practical functional assessment comes in. That's what Hanley says to do first is a PFA. And we know this, we're behavior analysts, we need to do assessments before treatment. So really making sure that you do a thorough assessment and you're able to understand all those contingencies involved in turning on and off the behavior so that you know, okay, I know those small baby components that she was talking about and I can shape this.
And also never forget the relationship, because by investing in the relationship and having the learner trust you, you're able to teach them all of these skills, but you're also able to hold boundaries when you need to. So that's what's so important with building that trust, with creating the HRE, and communication and all those amazing skills.
That is so, so huge, and not just for FCT, but for so many other things as well. For more information on FCT with skills-based treatment, click the link in and around this video or in the description and join our Cooperation Over Compliance Facts series. We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future videos, and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.